And good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, the HR Passion Guy, and I'm excited to bring you another installment of Passion Fridays, where people and their passions intersect, where we're talking about topics that we're passionate about. And I am excited to be coming to you springboarding from LinkedIn Live, but also via restream on Facebook Live, on the Marcus R. Holmes page, on Twitch TV, and YouTube events as HR Passion Guy. So if you're on any or all of those platforms, I hope that you will click share and tag 5 of your connections or followers, 5 of those that are connected within your circle that may be more popular, to join us in this talk and discussion. I love to talk about all things HR, and I'm just sharing it today. Some excerpts of a conversation keynote that I did with the United Consultancy Group of Nigeria. So shout out to them if they're watching. Some of this will be information that I share with them, but I'm going to share it with you live. I'm passionate about HR processes and people and purpose. And when those things connect, I think you have a sweet spot. And so I'm sharing this information. I hope that whether you're joining me on any or all of these platforms, that you will click share right now and tag someone who might be interested in talking about building yourself. If you're in an HR spot or leadership spot, building your organization. And of course, if you're in a leadership spot, building your people. And so I'm going to be sharing some excerpts of that. The information are excerpts from that presentation, but I am doing it here live with you. And so I hope that it will be of benefit to you if ever you are seeking to build yourself, which I think is an important part of work that we should all do. And so in this next hour, I plan to share some tools and tips that you might use if you're building either of the three. Whether or not you're a human resources professional or professional of any kind, I believe some of this can help you, especially if you're seeking to build yourself. So click share and tag someone who might be interested in building themselves or building their organization, small business owner, or anyone that might be interested in building. And again, thank you for joining us. I see some folks coming in on all platforms. Thank you, those of you that are joining on Twitch TV, on LinkedIn Live. I'm gesturing because I have a few other cameras going. Facebook Live on Marcus R. Holmes page, and those of you that are on YouTube events. And so again, I'm sharing just some excerpts of a discussion, a keynote that I did on HR as architect builders, answering the call of people managers. But some of these excerpts really, I think, are germane to anyone that is working on themselves. And I hope that we are all working on ourselves, but this might be something that would be of interest to you. And I hope that you will click share and tag someone to join us. You know, as the author of The Gratefulness Journey, every day, what are you doing in the next 30 days to transform your life? I must share with you how my mornings typically start, because the book talks about how you get your day started and how you use gratefulness to power your day. And I'll use that as this opening part of the discussion, talking about building things. So drop in the chat or in the comment if you've ever built anything from scratch, or built anything, or if you've ever baked anything from scratch, okay, or baked anything. Well, here's how I build my day, and I invite you to do the same through the gratefulness journey every day. As a man of faith, I believe that each day we are called to answer this gift of life, this gift of purpose, the gift of impacting people. So as a part of my regimen, I lie awake, connecting my being to the providence of God that has awakened me to this day. I sit and I often marvel in this reality of what I will call beingness. Beingness. I am being long before I am doing. My limbic system, my limbic resonance feels the presence of energy of life even before I'm thinking about doing anything with my life. So this is important because I believe that we're all called to do this: we're all called to build and design our lives ourselves. And so the greatest and highest expression of self is that from scratch building project that I think we all have. So we all are, I believe, are called to build ourselves. And I think over my career of human resources over the last 25 years, and 18 of which have been with the city, one of my newer purposes in that building is mentorship, mentoring. So I have this one mentee I'll share with you who was recently hired in her first HR director's role. And she's there for a small but growing construction company. She is building the HR function in that company from scratch. So she's answering the call to being a builder. And so I'm sharing with you in part some of the lessons and counsel that I've shared with her, namely building yourself, building your organization, and building the people within your organization. And that could be you're a small business owner and you're building. That could be you are the human resources person and your responsibility is for building organizational capabilities along with the CEO, right? And co-owning that that requirement for a successful business. It could be your church or some philanthropic organization or entity with which you are aligned, right? It's about building. And thank you, Anthony Smith, Jerona Green, Stacy English, all of you for joining. I hope you will click share. Just sharing some excerpts of a keynote. And I think some of this is helpful for people who want to work on themselves, right? So if you're answering the call every day, I believe you have to first believe that, number one, the phone is ringing. You hear it, right? You're hearing that you're called to something today. And then the second thing, you must feel that you're qualified or authorized to answer the call, right? Every call isn't for everybody, but there is a call for everybody and a call for you. And so you must know that you're qualified for the call. So we'll call my mentee Mary. Okay, so Mary answered the call to this director position in the small company. And she had worked in a different industry in HR as a generalist, which means she kind of does a little bit of everything and maybe doesn't specialize in one thing. But she was unsure. So she answered the call, but she was unsure. Although she outpaced several candidates through several rounds of interviewing, she was contending with the imposter syndrome. You know what that is, right? You feel like you aren't qualified or aren't worthy for the opportunity or position or place you find yourself in life. She had a fear that she was not good enough. She had a fear that she was not knowledgeable enough. She had a fear, simply put, that she wasn't enough. Now, maybe you've heard this before. But if ever the imposter syndrome faces you, if ever you're feeling that you're not qualified enough for a position or opportunity, one of the first things you should do is increase your self-talk. And that self-talk is speaking to those limiting voices, diffusing the limiting language. When you say to yourself, I'm not good enough, you challenge that and push back and say, no, why am I not good enough? And then you begin to write down your accomplishments and align them as closely as you can to the role that you don't feel qualified for or the position for which you don't feel qualified. And you say, okay, maybe I've never done that before, but I've done this, which is very similar. And you start to speak to all of those inner voices and external voices that are telling you or sending you messages that reinforce to you something that you don't feel good enough. You begin to counter the argument of I'm not good enough, right? You write a story about it, right? Write your story and then rehearse it like it's an Easter speech. And I don't know if you're like me and you grew up in church where you had to have these speeches and you had to memorize them and you said them in front of your parents over and over again, in front of your siblings over and over again until you knew it. Because the more you speak positively over what you have done, the more you will see yourself being able to take the next step. And I started here with that mentee, and I started here with the UGC group. I start here with you because you have to make sure that the foundation upon which you build is solid. You're almost doing a self SWOT analysis. It is looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, right? Your strengths, what are the things you have going for you? And where are you better than the competition? What's your secret sauce? What's your brand and reputation like in your industry, in your church, in your organization, right? The weaknesses, what is your Achilles heel? And what are your areas where you're exposed, where you're not quite up to par and you know it and others could potentially see it? And where is the lack of that reputation or brand presence, right? The opportunities, what can you take advantage of to build those things? Are there trainings? Are there mentorships? Are there classes? What options are available to you? And then threats, what could you do that would make you lose standing or go back or regress? And what risk are on the horizons, right? And so when we're talking about that building individual, in this sharing keynote, I talked about two facets of this analysis of building the individual, and then building the professional. Okay. And there are a lot of tools out there that you can use for building yourself. And I'm going to identify a few and share my screen to show you a few that I think will help you as an individual in this self SWOT analysis. Because really in the self SWOT analysis, you want to develop your strengths as an interconnected system. Okay, so you can pull from the various tools and resources you need to address various things on your position in your job and your life. You address your weaknesses as a journey. So you become aware of your weaknesses, but you can't overcome them in one day or 1 week. Who knows? But they're a continual journey upon which you are exploring and going down to ensure that you improve your weaknesses. I know there are strength-based teachings that only focus on strengths, but I don't think that you should only focus on strengths. You have to, in a way, focus on the weaknesses as a journey. Approach your opportunities with curiosity, because a lot of times we approach opportunities just based on what we know, not seeking to find out what we don't know, because it's what we don't know that could really create some havoc in our world. And then handle threats, treat threats as if they are opportunities. So you need to be curious about threats and prioritize them. So be curious about your threats, things that could regress, things that could take away from you. Be curious about them too. Treat them as opportunities, but treat them at a higher priority. And so when you think of the total self, you might think of yourself in these 3 ways. I'd like for you to think of it as you're building yourself as a part of you is your IQ, your intelligence quotient, right? Your ability to learn stays static over time. That determines how you're measured in intelligence, right? That it doesn't change unless there is some cognitive impairment, something that impairs your ability to learn, okay? Over time, you can learn more, but your ability to learn it doesn't change, okay? Then there's a part of you that's your personality. And that may, I'm doing this because the base of my elbow, I'm using as an anchor and buoy. You may ebb and flow, but your personality remains fairly consistent unless you have a metamorphosis or a transformative change, right? A spiritual awakening, right? Those are the things that could change your personality, right? And then there is emotional intelligence. And we're talking about building yourself. And it's been defined in many different ways by many different people. So for a working definition, we'll say the capacity to be aware of, control and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. Emotional intelligence is a primary key to both professional and personal success. So it's important that you evaluate and improve and develop your emotional intelligence. You have more control over your emotional intelligence, of course, than you do personality or IQ. And so the goal is to improve, to increase your emotional intelligence, which is key to your success, both personally and professionally. Okay. And when we're blind to the truth about our own ability to acknowledge and manage our own emotions, it's nearly impossible to learn and embrace new things and manage change in our lives. Daniel Goleman, who is one of the thought leaders in this area, says that if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going to get very far. Okay, and that's Daniel Goleman, and you'll see some of his work as I continue to present. So your goal is to know what triggers emotions in you. Own those emotions. Practice mindfulness around those emotions. And then empathize with people and be aware of their emotions and use those two things to have self-management and relationship management. And while we may think of ourselves as rational beings, the reality is that our thinking and our behaviors are powerfully impacted by our emotions, right? There's an enormous impact of emotions on organizational life and performance, right? So your individual emotions can impact organizations because organizations, just like you and I, have moods. Have you ever been in a room where it seemed like you could cut the tension with a knife? It was so thick, or it was almost palpable what you felt in the air. People were off or angry or disgruntled or discouraged or feeling hostile or alienated or feeling that there was mistrust. Some even shut down, right? Then think about times that you've been in rooms where people were all feeling happy, where people were all inspired, where people were all connected and confident. Have you ever been in that room? Give me a like or across platforms if you have. There are numerous studies that demonstrate that there is a high correlation between a positive organizational climate and factors such as mental efficiency, greater creativity, complex, decision making, and financial results. In fact, organizational climate has been shown to actually account for 20 to 30% of organizational performance. So the climate in which people work contributes to an organization's performance. There's one study that shows there are 70 work teams that were studied that show that people that enter meetings enter a state of shared moods after they've been in a meeting within 2 hours. Regardless of how people felt individually when they entered the meeting, after being together up to 2 hours, they all had the shared mood. Think of how powerful that is, that people coming from different experiences in a given day or moment can enter into a time and become almost symbiotically connected in as it relates to mood. The ability to understand and work skillfully with emotions, your own and others, is proving to be one of the most important competencies, especially for leadership in the 21st century, higher than analytics or conceptual thinking. So think about that, how important it is for you to build your emotional intelligence. Come into the knowledge of your emotions. Now, our emotions are usually fueled by some stories, right? Some content. We tell ourselves stories about what's happening. And then the beliefs determine that how we make meaning of that reality. And our pictures of reality may not have so much to do with anybody else's reality, right? I used to, in one of my roles, have satellite offices, and one of them was for the Zoological Institute. And I sent an email to a manager who had a harassment complaint against him. I sent the email on a Tuesday, and I didn't get a response. Wednesday morning, I sent another email. Didn't get a response. On Thursday, I picked up the phone. And in the system, as true in a lot of email systems, you can look in the system and see when somebody's opened the email. So I saw he opened both emails, but no response. My reality was that he was avoiding having this conversation about the harassment. And so when I called and said, hey, did you get my email? And he said, no, actually, I didn't. I prepared to raise up, to challenge him on having received the email because I could see where he had. But after a couple of deep breaths, an awareness came to me that that was my reality. I needed to hone in to what his reality was. His reality was he wasn't like me, the king of email. He hardly ever responded to email. And he's one of those people who click through their emails just to show that they've been open, even though they haven't been read. You see, if I wasn't aware that I was fueling a narrative that might not have been his reality, I could have went down a terrible path in having discussion with him, which could have led to some accusations and damaged our working relationship. It's like Mark Twain says, I've experienced many terrible things in life, most of which never happened, right? We build these narratives based on our reality and our emotions because we don't master them and have empathy for the other reality. Our beliefs and misperceptions can be factored in to regressing emotional intelligence. Building requires work on ourselves. You've heard of the foundational principle in transformational work. We must be the change. And you've heard Gandhi say that. You've heard Barack Obama say the change, we must be the change we want to see, right? Our change has come, right? Our ability to facilitate dealing with the emotions of others and ours is completely dependent on how well we know and are comfortable with our own emotions. We have to develop our personal comfort with engaging with the full range of emotions, from anger, joy, sadness, and fear in ourselves and in others. And our emotions can be a great ally, but only if we're aware of them and can maintain them. There are plenty of opportunities to get triggered, but the goal is to know your emotions, know your triggers, and be able to self-correct and self-manage. I'm going to share my screen because I do want to share some of Goldman's work on emotional intelligence. I think it's important work. And again, this work reveals one of the most important competencies that bring personal success. I want you to hear that. And professional success. So it's not just professional success. It's personal and professional success. Okay, make sure I'm getting my screens up. All right, let's see. I can share my screens. Hope that is sharing my screen there. I'm going to share a different screen. All right. Let's see. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen there. Give it a second to populate. I don't see it changing. All right. I may have to stop sharing the screen. I don't see that it's changing the screen for me. I'll try that one more time. Okay. Try that one more time. See if it comes up one more time. All right, very good. So Daniel Goleman talks about these characteristics of emotional intelligence, and there are 4 skills, and these 4 skills are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And I apologize that screen didn't populate, but what you're seeing on the screen is what Daniel Goleman says are the factors that go into driving these skills. And so for emotional awareness, there has to be emotional self-awareness. That's the ability to know your own emotions and their effect on your performance. And that's personally in relationships and professionally. And then self-regulation. It's the ability to keep your disruptive emotions and impulses in check in order to maintain your effectiveness under stress or even hostile conditions. I have another mentee who was having some borderline anger issues that stem from familial experiences. And one of the exercises that I had him do, and you can write down if you have a piece of paper, is to write down the words that you use when you're angry. And then practice replacing those words. And he had quite a list of expletives, I must say. Replacing those words with how you are feeling when you're saying those words. So if you're angry and you're saying, you get on my nerve, and that was one, but it had many expletives. How does getting on my nerves make you feel? And as you drill into that, you find out why you are triggered when someone gets on your nerve. What gets on your nerve? What pushes your buttons? And then you begin to replace those experiences with more positive. You feel those experiences, but you maintain your effectiveness under stress because you begin to replace them with more positive thoughts, more openness, more breathing to help you self-regulate. It talks about, as you're doing the self-management, positivity is the ability to see the best in people, the best in situations and events, so you can be persistent in pursuing goals despite setbacks and obstacles. So you might be able to say, this person's getting on my nerves, but this is a person I love, or this is a person I respect. Maybe he or she is not having a good day. And so you begin to see the best in people instead of the worst, right? The best in the situation, the best in the events instead of the worst. The achieve factor in that means that you strive to meet or exceed a standard of excellence by embracing challenges, taking calculated risk, and looking for ways to do things better. Okay, here's conflict. Here's the person that triggers you. Now, how can I embrace this challenge and take a risk to deepen emotional safety and deepen psychological safety with this person so we can get to the bottom of what this conflict is and how we can use our time together more productive instead of me saying, oh, here they come. And if you've ever had a person that you say, oh, here they come to, you know what I'm saying, right? Adaptability means you stay focused on your goals, but you can easily adjust how you get there. You remain flexible in the face of challenge and change, and you can juggle multiple demands, and you're open to new situations, ideas, or innovative approaches. Empathy means you have the ability to sense others' feelings, have a desire to understand how they see things, and takes an active interest in their concerns. Okay, and that's a part of the social awareness. Okay. Organizational awareness, which is also for an organization, part of the social awareness. It's your ability to read a group's emotional currents and power relationships, identifying influencers, networks, and the dynamics that matter in decision making. And we'll talk a little bit about this organizational awareness and organizational network analysis that I think is really important if you're building organizations. Influence refers to the ability to have a positive impact on others and meaningfully engage people in order to get buy-in or gain their support. Coach is the ability to further the learning or development of others by understanding their goals, challenging them, giving them timely feedback, and offering them support. Inspire is the ability to bring your best and motivate others around a shared mission or purpose in order to get the work done. Teamwork, the ability to work with others toward a shared goal, builds spirit and positive relationships, encourage active participation, and share responsibility and rewards among members of a group. And conflict management is the ability to work through tense or highly charged situations by tactfully bringing disagreements into the open, seeking to understand multiple perspectives, and searching for common ground in order to find solutions people can agree upon. So that's really important. And thank you, Devon Smith, for joining us, and Simone Jo Moore. Expanding your emotional vocabulary is so powerful in helping you to understand the level of button pushing. Yes. Oh, yes. Find your relationship nexus in your organization is a key factor indeed. It's not always straight up and down or left and right to the row. Yep. Which we're learning so much of. And I appreciate that, Simone Jo Moore, and bonjour. I think I'm saying bonjour to you from France. Okay. And so I wanted to share that information because those 4 skills, I listed 10 factors that drive those 4 skills, according to Daniel Goleman in his work on emotional intelligence. But the 4 skills are self-awareness, self-management. It is becoming aware of your emotions, owning those emotions, understanding your triggers, and then managing, self-regulating those, right? That's self-awareness, self-management. Then social awareness, which also includes organizational awareness, is really understanding, sensing the emotions of others, right? Understanding the dynamics that are at play in organizations and teams and groups and relationships, right? And then being able to manage those 2, your awareness of people, your awareness of dynamics, your awareness of self-emotions, to power your relationship management to get results through relationship, which I think is very important. And we'll talk about results through relationships in just a moment. There's a lot that we talked about human resources professionals specifically relative to the HR competency study round 8. And I think I will save some of that while we're on this tract about building yourself. There are some assessments you can do. Of course, core strengths is one of the assessments that I'm getting ready to show you, which I think is important for the individual, but also important as we kind of talk a little bit and transition to talk a little bit about the organization, right? It's important for the individual because as an individual, you need to know how you are showing up in the world. Important that you know how you are showing up in relationships. And a part of the emotional intelligence that's important to know is you really gain how you show up by asking somebody who can be transparent and honest with you. You know how you show up, but you don't know what your blind spots are. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so it's good to have a partner, accountability partner, someone who you can trust to give you the truth, to say, when I'm angry, tell me what you see. Tell me what you feel. Tell me how you know I'm angry. Tell me how you know I'm sad. Tell me how you know when I'm frustrated. Do you know when I'm frustrated? Do you know when I'm sad? Describe how I look. What are my faces like? What are my gestures like? Do my nostrils flare? Do my eyes raise? What signs or signals do you gather when you say, oh, Marcus is frustrated? Or does my tone change? And then you have to be honest to embrace it and own it. If you don't embrace it and own it, it will do you no good. So you have to find someone who you trust to tell you the truth. Now, there are some triggers that you know that there are people that push your buttons. You might not even know why. But you first know that there are buttons that can be pushed because of certain behaviors. You allow certain buttons to be pushed, right? You have the power and you give that power to somebody when they push certain buttons. And your goal is to understand those buttons, know why they are buttons and why they're being pushed, right? And be able to manage through those while they're being pushed so that you're still able to continue to be present and be the person that you want to be, that you want to show up as, which is very important. So several years ago, I had a team member and we couldn't see eye to eye on just about anything. And we were both looking for tools that would help us because we had to work together in the small unit part of the team, larger team, but we had specific work. And so for us to work together better, we were looking for tools, and we both found the same tool and sent it to each other almost at the same time. And this tool is Core Strengths, Results Through Relationships. And I highly recommend it to organizations, especially if you plan to examine your organization outside of beyond the org chart. You plan to examine the relationships, how information and business and work gets done in your organization based on relationships. If you plan to examine that, if you plan to examine the social structure of your organization and who the influencers are and what are the networks through which business occurs, what are the nodes, NODES, you will know that about organizational network analysis if you're familiar with it. What are the nodes and ties in that organization, and how maybe can you see the attributes that are in common and how you might use those as influencers, organizational ambassadors, or how you might use those as prototypes to replicate throughout the organization so that you get more results through relationship. And so I'm going to share my screen, hopefully quickly and successfully this time, so that you will be able to see, let's see. Yep, I think you will be able to see it. Yep. What you should be seeing on the screen is my portrait from Core Strengths. Now, Core Strengths is similar to a DISC assessment, if you're familiar with DISC, but it has what's called a motivational value system. How do I show up in my normal motivational value system when things are at peace? And how do I show up when things are in conflict? And so my motivational value system shows that I'm what's considered a hub. I'm pretty even across three areas of this motivation value system. The blue really reflects people who are motivated by people and connecting to people, okay? Red are people who are motivated by accomplishing task or performance, right? And green is typically, I'm kind of simplifying it, but typically people who are motivated by process oriented. So I am pretty even across the three, which is an accurate reflection to me. And talking with other people, I said, hey, I'm a hub. And people say, yeah, I see sometimes you're more red, sometimes you're more blue, but you're definitely green. As you can see, I'm pretty even blue-red, but there's some green to me. And maybe I could make the screen a little bit larger. I don't know. Okay. So I am assertive, but I'm also nurturing, but I'm also analytical and methodical, but maybe not as much as I am the others. And so here's my strengths portrait. My strengths portrait says that my strongest strength, according to this, is a blue strength. And it is, I am dedicated to some people, activities, or purposes. I am a loyalist. I'm devoted to a thought. If I am in with you, I am in with you. And it's hard for me to fall out of it with you. Now, that doesn't prevent me from being passionate about the things we agree and disagree about, but I'm devoted to a cause. I'm devoted to an organization. I'm devoted to the people. I'm devoted. And it's not easy to move me away from that devotion when things are going well. You'll see that the sociable is a representative really of the three, and that's why it's kind of a black or grayish. I am equally sociable as it relates to people, but it's part of the hub of me. I can adapt in most social settings. The next thing is I'm analytical. I will dissect the dissect of the dissect, right? That's one of my other strengths. And as you see, as you go down each rung and layers, it's a representative of these are strengths, but maybe not as strong as the layer above them, the rung above them. Okay. You will see as you go to the bottom, some of my least strong strengths, or some might say opportunities. I may not be as quick to act as I am devoted, or as I am forceful, or as I may not be as cautious as I am, right? So those aren't at my strongest, okay? And you can see how my red has an interesting pattern around self-confidence, competitiveness, risk-taking, and persuasiveness. I can be very persuasive, which means that sometimes I can be forceful. I can be not as tolerant if I believe that what I am doing is right, right? Why is this important? It's important to know what your strengths are, because your strengths in times of peace, that's what this is, are the things you draw on most easy and most quickly. And it's important when you're interacting with others to do that, okay? It also talks about in times of conflict, okay? So when my conflict sequence, when I'm in conflict, my conflict sequence is the first thing I go to, which is a little bit less even. You see it, if you can see it, it's 44, 37, 19. So I'm a little bit more green, which means that when conflict is brought to me, I first try to analyze it. I ask a lot of questions. I want to understand. Normally without regard to the conflict, I'm quick to ask questions, to be inquisitive, to inquire. Why, how, what, where, when, who, right? And when I don't get to that answer that I think is sufficient, I get to red and I go right to the heart of the matter, right to being assertive, right to being direct, to get to how is this going to prevent us from getting stuff done, or how is this going to help us to get stuff done? And then as I become more accommodating and start to engage thought around the people, I become more blue, and I either accommodate or try to find some conciliation. It's important to know that. It's important to know I would be triggered potentially by someone who approaches me in conflict who is red, because they're just going to blurt out what they think, and it's very direct. And my conflict sequence is to understand why this is a challenge for you, right? And it's important to know that because it lets me know my trigger points. And so Simone is saying, does this analysis also describe how you ameliorate or use your strengths to support your weaknesses? And so this is kind of a strengths-based. So those lower levels, Simone, are considered opportunities. And then each person gets an individual assessment that tells you how your strengths can be overdone strengths and how those areas of opportunity could be improved. So yes, you get an assessment of how you can work toward improving those lower strengths, I'm going to call them, in the strength-based kind of thinking. I think it's important in building yourself to have this kind of assessment because it helps you to understand how you show up and what triggers you, how you operate when things are going well and peaceful, and how you operate when things aren't going well and peaceful. This is very important work because when you are thinking about analyzing relationships in an organization, we have these hierarchies, we have these org charts, but there are relationships that are beyond those org charts. And it's important to understand everybody's mode of operating when they are in peace and when they are in conflict, and which relationships bring results. And this is a great tool to use alongside your organizational network analysis if you want to drive results through relationships. It's also great for a husband and wife. It's also great for parents and children who are having challenges or who want to get better results in relationship. The start of that is you. It's building yourself. It's building upon your strengths and pulling up your lower strengths and understanding what strengths can be overdone, because a very devoted person can be blind to some things that could be detrimental to his or her health, right? And so that could be an overdone strength. Someone who is devoted goes above and beyond and may even be an enabler. See how that could be overdone? And you have to know that and have to know how it triggers you when you are in conflict with someone that you have enabled. All of that helps to build your emotional intelligence and helps to build results through relationships, which I think are intimately important. Okay. We're at 1246, and I think that was a helpful part of building yourself, because the more that I speak with mentees, the more that I talk with individuals, the more important that I see the light bulb is going off in organizations that emotional intelligence is a key consideration, a key competency for business and personal success. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about building the organization and briefly about building the people at 1246. While I'm taking that quick break, I want to remind you that the Gratefulness Journey every day, what are you doing in the next 30 days to transform your life, is available on Amazon. It's a 70-page read, a short read. But I think this gratefulness consideration, and we're coming upon Gratitude Day next week, and we'll talk more live then. But I think this is key to your journey through mindfulness and your journey in evaluating and developing emotional intelligence. So it's available for you on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. I want to share with you building organizations, answering that call to build an organization, even if it's a small organization, requires agile vision casting and aligning the organizational capabilities to support that vision as it ebbs and flows. I have a great friend who is actually like a little brother to me. He's an architect by trade, and he's one of the few African-American architects actually at his firm. I asked him as I was preparing for that keynote about his process for design. He was privileged to work on a design project in Africa. And so I had a very specific interest in his thought around that architecture and design process and access points. I believe access points are a critical part of building anything. And he validated that thought. And I'm happy to share part of it with you. One day, seemingly out of the blue, a woman at church challenged him to answer a call to build. And that call to him led to a conversation with a Ghanaian orthopedic visionary by the name of Dr. Buwachi. Now, my friend Taft Cleveland met Dr. Buwachi at the Detroit Yacht Club. And while listening to Dr. Buwachi cast his vision, Taft pulled out a pen and a napkin, and he began to sketch this village concept of a hospital that had these pavilions. This sketch later became the forerunner for the same drawings that were used to bring this hospital called Focos to fruition. And the hospital is now 10 years old. Taft's initial sketch and his ability to use data and trends, mission and vision, as he heard from Dr. Buwachi, to do strategic long-term planning, to understand the regulations and codes over there in Ghana and best practices on room size, the state laws, fact-finding, and something I learned, certificate of need, which is you can't just build a hospital wherever you want to. It has to be outside of a certain radius of other hospitals or clinics and things of that nature. I had no thought of that. Identifying the right planners and engineers and project managers, all of that led him to a trip to Ghana. So he went to Ghana and he thought of access, and it resonated with me in this regard. Access regards or looks at how people get to you, not only that they get to you. So when you're building your organization, you have to think about how people get to apply and learn about your organization and interact with your brand, not just that they arrive, but where did they come from? And you have to build access that makes a pathway clear for those that come from different places. He talked about building pavilions that had access for people who would be walking, because these people would have spinal injuries and some would have deformities and not be able to walk and different things. So you had to think about access from that standpoint. Some people would get an Uber there, right? Some people will be carried there. And so he thought about the orthopedic access, both outdoor and indoor, having an outdoor recovery area and an indoor recovery area, all sketched on a napkin, took him to Ghana and helped him to think about sustainability. It's the same thing when you're thinking about building your organization. Building your organization structure with relationships that work. And what I mean by that, relationships that drive the work of the organization. Who are the people that interact and get things done in your organization? Who are the people in your organization that influence other groups and other decision makers? Who are the people in your organization that are connectors of information? And you have to be able to analyze the relationships that drive business results that go beyond the structure of the traditional org chart. You might learn about these through the organizational network analysis that I talked about, using a tool and laying upon that tool something like a core strengths. And then when you think about your culture as a part, you think about your infrastructure, the processes and the procedures and the technology that help you accomplish your business, your goals, your outcomes. Then you've got to employ some design thinking approaches potentially. You know, before you say, I'm going to lean out this process, you want to ask people who are actually involved in the process, who does this process best? How do we get the most effective work done? You look at your infrastructure. After you've determined the relationships that make things work, you look at the tools, the information flow, and resources that connect people to getting the outputs and outcomes that you want done. And then in building that organization, thinking about culture, if you're building emotional and psychological safety in your culture, you can democratize the power. Okay? And I think that's important because we are all talking about more inclusive workplaces, more diverse workplaces, more equitable workplaces. Bodies are wanted in the room, but voices aren't really. You have to create an environment where people are not only at the table and not only have the permission to speak, they have the access to the leadership and the resources that make decisions, or it is democratized so they can be a part of the decision making, so that they can ideate with their colleagues without reserve, with their supervisors and superiors without reserve. That you can build responsive people systems that help people manage racial conflict and equity and justice conflict through things like restorative practices. You have to think power with instead of power over, right? And sometimes we hold back that power from this well-meaning but misguided belief that our power, being powerful, sometimes diminishes others. And we can indeed wield power in ways that make people feel smaller, right? But you can also exercise authority in a way that's respectful, that inspires and empowers others. It was one said, actually, as you become more powerful, so do those that are in relationship with you. And as they become more powerful, then you in turn become even more powerful. This power is understood as relational power, power with, and not over. So you got to have power with and not over. Establishing clear rules for how power is exercised, how power is, people are held accountable who use power, through clarifying roles and responsibility, and then layering in decision-making authority and determining that reach within the organization, maybe using a decision matrix. Trusting people, being transparent, encouraging resilience when the wrong decision is made, and then ensuring that everybody understands the decision matrix. Then you got to provide people the why of the power. Why should you use this power? To what end? And you drive that in the organization, ensuring that communication is making its way through the entire organization and that there is some feedback process. Okay? So it's important that you build these access points so that people can have access to the power. And it empowers them to drive business to the center of the organization, where you have these nodes, these people who are centric nodes. They are centered to the connection points in the organizations where relationships work well. And you harness those relationships and then replicate it throughout the organization. And you can layer on performance data and learning data so that you see who the top performers are, and do these top performers also positively correlate with the relationships that make business work, and replicate that throughout the organization. We're at 12:57 and it's been a great hour, I think. I just want to close before I close, talking about building people. Building people, I think, has to do with leaders in small businesses, leaders in large businesses, could be a pastor, could be a coach on the football team. People have great opportunity to build people. Now, in the job context, there's a lot of talk around this great resignation, that in April of this year, nearly 4 million people left their jobs. And the months following that, I think, are higher, but we haven't had the final numbers that have been released. 4 million people left their jobs, and not 40 million people left the job market, but 4 million people left their companies. And the Work Institute's report on retention might surprise you. It says the number one reason that people left is not pay. It's not their managers, as people love to tout. It's career development. 20% of the people left because they want to grow. And whether you are a leader of a church choir, whether you're a leader of a football team, whether you're a leader of a team in an organization, a small business owner, keep front of mind to you that people want to grow. And if you want to keep good people and build them, you have to have ways and opportunities for them to grow. That's the number one thing that you want to do in building people, is make the opportunity for them to grow in your organization, on your team, in your unit, a key priority. It says to them that there are opportunities for them to deepen their impact, and deepening impact deepens relationships and deepens engagement to an organization. It's 12:59, and I am so excited to share this information. As I said, this is from a keynote that I was so honored to do for a consultancy group of HR professionals in Nigeria and Africa. No, I didn't go there, but I went via Zoom. But I am so excited that they do want to have me come there. And I wanted to share this information with you because it's not just for human resources professionals. Individual growth is important. Building yourself is important. Building myself is important. And if we can be about the business of enhancing, improving our emotional intelligence, enhancing and improving our self-talk, enhancing and improving the steps we take after that, building our organizations if we're leaders or owners or pastors or teachers or leaders, and building our people will bring for better business outcomes, better systems, better organizations, and a much better world. And I'm passionate, I don't know about you, for the opportunity to have a better world, a better life, a better organization. I'm going to go to the comments. It's 12:01, just before I leave. Multi-channel access isn't just about people connecting to you through the phone, email, etc. That's right. You have to, in this organizational network analysis, as a part of it, it's a social structure analysis, right, Simone? So you're going to analyze how people connect and how information flows, right? And so it's not just, it's all connections and however that happens in your organization. And so it behooves savvy organizations to look at how information flows in their organization and analyze that. Some of it will be an email sentiment analysis, right? Some of it will be surveys based on how people use your chat function, use your Slack, use your Microsoft Teams. Some of it will be where people gather in the social structure and where they meet informally, right? So you have to do a broad-based organization, well, I'm going to call it a thorough organizational network analysis to see what is a channel and where is information flowing, where are processes meeting that information, where are there centric nodes or people who are responsible or who have taken the responsibility for sharing that information, where are there peripherals, people that are disconnected, but that could bring value that we need to bring more centric to the infrastructure, and assess that, synthesize it to come up with the plan to get results through those relationships beyond the org chart. So I agree with you. Yes, people are leaving because we are being, right? And we want the evolution of being. I love becoming. I love that. Thank you, Simone Joe. We are, like I said at the outset, starting the day, you connect with the providence of God. I am a man of faith, so my providence is God. He is above all, through all, and in us all. And so connecting with that providence means that I am a being. I'm created in his image and likeness. I am a being. And the more that we get to define the being, we won't just measure the doing. So long before I'm doing anything, I am being. And I'm on a continuous evolution of being, or as you say, becoming. And that must be front of mind, because if I'm just doing and it doesn't connect to the evolution of my being, I'm not growing. And so I agree with that. And thank you so much for that. If you've liked any or all of this content, I hope you will do two things. I hope you will click like, and I hope you will click share and tag someone who you believe is on a journey or needs to be on a journey of building themselves, building their organizations, or building their people. I would appreciate that you would do that. Look for in the next couple of weeks. So many places don't have any extension of unemployment. People are getting back to work, and some people are saying there are lots of jobs out there. I don't know where to look. I don't know where to start. I'm rusty on interviewing. Boy, do I have a seminar for you. It's your 30, 60, 90-day plan to your next job offer. It will be coming in just a few short weeks. It's an on-demand webinar, a few modules that you will be able to partake in that will help you get to your next job offer. There are plenty of jobs out there, plenty of opportunities. And if you have any trepidation about interviewing or getting that resume or networking or any of the things that you want to do to make sure you get the right position for you, you want to connect to me, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitch TV, or YouTube events, to make sure you're part of that on-demand series. I'm Marcus Holmes, the HR Passion Guy. I am passionate about people, process, and human resources. And I'm passionate when people are connected to their purpose and an intersection that makes impact in the world. And so if you'd love to become a guest or join us, please inbox me at the LinkedIn Marcus R. Holmes, and stay tuned. We're going to go back and talk some more about public service because there's a great need in public service for great people just like you. We're going to be talking with our friends in public safety and talking about opportunities that are available today. And so stay tuned to us. Click to connect with us if you're not connected with us on any of these platforms. And we'll see you next Friday. Have a grateful weekend. And thank you so much for tuning in today.